Eagles. Solid victory. I think the Eagles are an underrated team going into this, definitely on the defensive side for sure, which I think we talked about last week on your show. But give us a quick little recap. Obviously the game is, seems like it was weeks ago, but it was only 4 days ago. Give us a little recap, Rob, on what you thought of the overall game between the Eagles and the Niners.
Yeah, I got to admit that I'm a little bit perplexed as to who this 49ers team is. I thought I had a really good idea of their identity coming into the season. I thought that it was going to be very clear-cut, dominant defense, top 5 in the league. I had that predicted, pegged the entire time. And potentially we still have a defense that can be tops, but week 1 shook me there. And week 2, an ugly in the trenches game like that, it left me immediately with some concerns. After watching the first game live, I go through it like a fan. I don't take any notes. I don't ruin the fan experience. I watch it as a 49er faithful. Mm-hmm. And I got to say that I was left a little underwhelmed by the game. But in going back and watching the game multiple times after and taking notes on what was actually happening in the trenches, I feel a little bit better about it. So those are the types of games that you have to win in a season. Season's long, 17 games. There are going to be some ugly ones. And I'll tell you what, looking back on it, it's a win. It doesn't matter how it happened. It doesn't matter if there were mistakes. It goes up on the record as a win in the win column. And that's really all you can ask for at this point in the season when the team is still trying to find their legs. I did think that we struggled a little bit with the mobile quarterback, but every team in the NFL struggles with mobile quarterbacks. It leaves me concerned for facing Seattle and Arizona, but that's weeks away. Let's go up against Aaron Rodgers first.
Right. Yeah, I mean, I think you would love to see the 49ers just come out and smack up every team that they play. But let's be honest, this is the NFL. Everybody, and getting wins in the NFL is tough. Especially we did a breakdown of the NFC West. We don't think that it's going to be one team that runs away with this. It's going to go down to the last few games of the season to kind of maybe even place first place bye to not even making the playoffs, right? Because that's how good this division can be. So picking up wins against teams that you're supposed to beat is very important. So it's good to see that the 49ers are taking care of business, which is not something that we were able to do last season, right?
No, it's not.
Yeah. And I think the biggest takeaways that I had, Rob, and then I'll hand it back over to you, is the adjustments, right? So I think DeMeco Ryans crumpled up the wide 9 paper that he had in there, and he's just like, we're not going to use this anymore. And I think the 49ers defense looked pretty strong right from the jump, and they came in very well prepared. The rushing attack was okay. I mean, they're still getting gashed, but it didn't necessarily lead to points. It didn't lead, the 49ers are doing a really great job, bending but not breaking. And then when it comes to the red zone, kind of dominating, right? And not getting any points. So I thought DeMeco Ryans making that change was great to see, because we've seen coaches in the past kind of be stubborn with the way that they want to play whatever side of the ball they are and not make those changes. So seeing that from DeMeco Ryans, I think was good. The other thing was seeing the shift that Shanahan made from the first quarter to, this late half of the second quarter into the second half. He saw that defensive line was getting the better of the 49ers offensive line, and he made the shifts. He started pitching the ball outside, giving, dinking and dunking with Jimmy to the point where he was getting the ball out. It seemed like he just hiked it and he was throwing the ball, right? Really helping out that offensive line. And, they moved the ball, had 2 really great long drives, that put up the points that eventually, was enough to get the victory. And then Mitch Wishnowsky, seeing what he was able to do as the punter, I think was an extremely important aspect of this game, because having the Eagles have to do those long drives actually helped with the 49ers, is because it seemed like they were able to get the first 2 first downs pretty easy, but that third first down ended up being pretty difficult, and the 49ers were able to get them off. And instead of it being a field goal attempt, it was a punt because of how deep Wisniewski, kept them back. So those were my biggest takeaways from the game. How do you feel about those?
Yeah, I think you called out one thing very important, which is the idea that you can understand why 49ers fans are a little bit trepidatious about where we are as a team, because you're looking at games that when the schedule came out, people said to themselves, yep, the 49ers are going to win these two. So up to this point, they've just held serve. And so there's a lack of excitement because people should be excited. 2-0 is the best that you can start, right? That's it. You can't get any better than that after 2 games.
Right.
But I understand that fans expected that out of the gate, and the wins were not overwhelmingly positive, and therefore potentially people are left with some questions. And I have some questions of my own. We're certainly looking at some death by attrition on the running back room. It's just unbelievable to watch so many players within one position group go down. So that's certainly a concern. You wonder who we have at wide receiver behind Deebo Samuel up to this point in production, because they just disappeared against the Eagles, and not necessarily a secondary that I expected to shut down our passing game. Potentially that was because of the dominance of the and the aggression of the defensive front for Philadelphia, and the shift in the game plan that you mentioned there, with Shanahan going to the wide, short passes, trying to get the ball moving. But I think that a quarter of scoreless football is not going to fly these next 3 weeks. You can't go an entire quarter just going 3 and out. And that was what we saw against Philly, a defense that may turn out to be great by the end of the year. But certainly going into it, I don't think it was anyone's prediction that they were a dominant defense. And so if the offense is going to struggle there, you would think that there are going to be some tough matchups coming up that we need to be concerned about. And, I thought that on the defense, the positive surprise, if I'm going to do a couple of negatives, I want to get away from being a negative Nancy here. I'm excited. I'm happy. The defensive backs, really, I had low expectations, and we'll touch on it later, but I was very pleased. The safeties, Jaquiski Tartt, Jimmy Ward, made some game-saving plays. So I thought that was certainly something to be excited about. And what we're really going to need going forward, if we have any hope of this defense remaining elite, we have the dominant defensive line. We had a shutdown corner who's now out for the year. So we need that average or above average play from his replacements, and then have that veteran presence with the safeties. I think that it's a potential recipe for a top 5 defense. I'm just not as sure about it now as I was at the beginning of the season.
Sure. I mean, when you have 2 of your best starters out in Dre Greenlaw and Jason Verrett, obviously next man up is important, but it's a lot of talent to lose and still expect, great things. But that's what we do. I thought this was hilarious from Pinor. That is exactly kind of what we look like if we were babies. But before we move on, let's talk about just more specific about this game. Standout player. Who to you, I know you mentioned a few position groups that impressed you, but if you were to narrow it down to a player, who would be your standout player of this game?
Yeah, when I was going through here and putting my grades on the various position groups as I looked at this game in recap, the one that got the most solid grade was special teams. And I got to give the nod to Mitch Wisniewski, because people overlook the importance of special teams. The third phase of the game. I go back to the old school mentality where you win a football game when you can dominate on 2 phases of the game. And one of those can be special teams. People should look back and think to Ted Ginn on those 2011, 2012, and 2013 Niners teams where he really could shift the field. And, I think, say what you want about how Mitch got onto the team. It's fair to question spending a 4th round pick on a punter. That's an entirely fair criticism. It's fair to wonder, was he a significant upgrade over Bradley Pinion, who seems to be crushing it for Tampa Bay? investing in someone who was a late comer to the game where he's already in his late 20s. And so his prime is going to have come and went early in his NFL career. All of those are fair criticisms. But look at the game on Sunday against Philadelphia. Look at the impact that the punter had on that game. I think if you took him off the field, we probably would have lost it. To your points earlier, putting Philly in difficult positions, pinning them inside the 20. To me, it was a game-changing day for Mitch Wishnowsky, and I've always been a fan, but I had to give him the nod, the NFC Special Teams Player of the Week.
Woo! I like it. We have some of in the comments, some guys being shouted out. Harold Murillo says Kinlaw came through as well with that blocked field goal. Definitely back to the special teams that you were talking about.
I want to tag in on that because I think that Kinlaw could be the difference for this defense throughout the season, because behind him in the interior, we're getting moved around. And if teams can run up the gut on the 49ers defense, that is going to be difficult to defend. But when you have Kinlaw in there, it is a different scenario. Kinlaw, DJ Jones, forget about it.
Yeah. Pynor, Tart for defense, Tart for defense, and Wishnowsky, Debo for offense. Yeah, Debo's been offensive stud for the last 2 weeks. But I'm gonna go a little bit different route. Demo Lenore for me. And the reason being, he had the one play, obviously, that he got burnt for, that thankfully the defense did their job and there was no points scored off of that. But if you looked at it, they kept going at him. And it was a tough situation for him to be in, getting thrown into as a starter, and not just as a starter. He was the longest tenured person in that quarterback room, because Norman had only been there for a week. So for him to be it as a rookie and hold as strong as he did, I mean, he saved a touchdown, we saw, because of his cerebral type playing and using the sideline. I think that was against, was that against Smith? I think that was against Smith. Or maybe it was against Quez. I don't know. But one of those speedsters.
Yep.
And throughout the game, other than that one deep ball that he kind of got turned around with, he pretty much kept the team and we kept those receivers at bay. And I think that is a really great sign, especially that he could handle all the pressure that was on him. I thought, there was this one play where Verrett and I think it was Ward against Detroit. It was that crossing play. And Verrett actually went inside when he should have gone outside, and it kind of messed everything up. And Hawkinson ended up getting a touchdown. That same play in the middle of the field happened between Lenore and Ward, and they played it perfectly. Ward, shadowed the inside receiver perfectly, and it ended up being an incompletion instead of a really big play that could have changed the momentum for the time and down that play was thrown at. I just thought Lenore played amazing, and I give him like a little bit more extra for just pressure, because he's a rookie coming into a situation where we're looking at him to be cornerback one pretty much in that game. And to me, he passed with flying colors. So I'm giving the props to Demo Lenore.
I like it. And I think it's well-deserved when you look at coming into that game, what the expectations were, playing as a fifth-round draft pick in his rookie year, just his second game, with very little help on the other side, coming from a veteran who's only been with the team for under 2 weeks.
Right.
It was a tough situation to get thrown into, and credit to him for not allowing that big completion to throw him off his game, because that's a critical trait for a successful defensive back, is that short memory. You got to be able to forget that last play and move on to the next one. And it sure seemed like he was able to do that after giving up what could have been a deflating play.
Yeah,